Alrighty, hi everyone. My name is Leroy Smith. I am the founder and at Realized Curriculum Solutions. We used to go under the name, and we still come to you all tonight for a very important topic, and that topic is vision for education. This share and post this whether it's live and subscribe to the channel. At Realized Curriculum Solutions, we're all about focusing with the adults for different cultural and racial communities, um, and really want students to become critically conscious advocates in their communities so that they can empower the change that we often are looking for. They all have this moment. And like I said, I'm sharing this right now to my other platforms on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. So, so feel free to share this, like I said, to your friends, your family, your colleagues, so we can get the conversation started. And don't be afraid to kind of jump in here and ask any questions in the chat so I can engage with you even further. I am on Twitter individually. Funny name is Mr. 23 is my Twitter handle. So feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you're interested in continuing the conversation. And like I said, the conversation is going to start soon. I'm sorry I'm coming to you all late tonight. It was a long day with family related things, and so it's just been a long day. How about that? Don't want to be too descriptive, but it was a tough one today. Porter, I may think a radical love the foundation of education doesn't mean you think that. And I want a newsletter that it goes your thought process on this. I'm actually going to refer your eyes and being in education for so long. I got into education a long time ago, actually. This is my first curriculum corner live, so I want to give you a little bit of background, not just the business of my own personal journey in education. Like I said, my name is Leroy. I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, Proud resident, proud native, born often are because of some systemic things and some are individual things and a combination, of course. I wanted to just give back to my community because I noticed that so many people in my family did not have the educational opportunities I had and was gifted by exceptional educators. I went to public school all my life until I went to a private liberal arts college, figures. And I got into education when I was in high school. I thought I was going to be a music teacher of all things. And I wound up being an adjunct music professor for a gospel ensemble at a college in Maryland. And I really enjoyed it, but I was stuck between commuting down in DC and teaching. As you can imagine, it was a lot. But I started my journey in education really back in 2011. I guess formally or informally, if you want to say that. Um, and I did an internship while I was at Gettysburg College at a Montessori school in Gettysburg and a bilingual school in Gettysburg. And I learned so much from the reading specialist there and so much from the staff there about how to love and care for children, which is what I'm talking to you all about tonight. And but my real beginning in education started when I was just a little boy, when I was maybe about 4 or 5 from my earliest memories. My maternal grandmother, who's no longer with us, rest in power, she had like a little miniature daycare in our house. So there were people in our neighborhood, other kids that were younger that, I helped her change diapers or help get the bottles ready or whatever it may have been to help her out. And I was really interested in helping out children from a young age. As a child, I was a peer tutor often in elementary through middle and high school. I was a peer tutor in college. I tutored and did educational kind of programs while I was in college. Like I said, I was training to be a music education major at the time, and then I changed that to just being a regular vocal music major due to some some BS, to be quite honest. But let's not get here to talk about the nonsense of that time while I was at Gettysburg. And then I graduated 2012 undergrad, and then I went into an alternative teaching program called Urban Teachers. So if any urban teachers, fellows, or current residents are watching this, I just wanted to wish you all luck and let you know that you're going to be pretty well prepared for the classroom of today's age with your urban teacher's background. So I did that, taught in Baltimore City schools. Didn't necessarily work out for me. And then I went down to DC and then kind of fluctuated between Prince George's County and DC charters and public schools. Last year was my last year in the classroom full time. As of right now, I don't know if I might return or not, but as when I started my business, realized curriculum solutions back in 2020 during the pandemic to support families of mine, former students and current students who needed help in curriculum solutions and advocacy support for kids who have special needs. And so I've been doing this work for a while since, like I said, 2012 officially, so 11 years this year. And I'm excited to still be in the education space, and it's a deep passion of mine because I believe education is one of the pathways towards liberation. And I wanted to briefly talk about that with you all tonight about why I believe a radical love is at the center, is at the foundation of education, at least in my opinion. So let's get into it. How do I define a radical love? Usually when people hear someone say, "Oh, I love you," you think it's like either a family member or a loved one, a friend, an intimate partner. But people sometimes have a hard time saying that they love working with children or love the humanity and the communities that the children that we work with come from. The work around that love that I love where my students come from. I love the families that have gifted them to me as an educator and or who have gifted them to me to provide curriculum services and supports to. And I love the fact that they're just human beings and that they exist and that they have the capability of doing some amazing things when given the right supports to do so. Now, a radical love is just a little different than just a regular love. A regular love is a genuine level of care for someone and concern, but a radical love is a love that not only looks at the general concern and care of someone, but it looks at what wrongs have been done or are being done, and how do I effectively remove those barriers for people I love? Because I can still care about someone and be concerned about someone, but also not be as concerned or know how to remove the barriers that would make the relationship and make that child or person or adult even better. Or seek the better that of what they're looking for in their lives. Now, a radical love is also saying no. Is saying, no, I'm not allowing you to do that because here's why. I love you enough to say no. I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions. And so it's a whole combination of things of loving through freedom, letting go. And so that's why I think what a radical want your love or your radical love. Sometimes love is not reciprocated. Often, some people don't understand how to reciprocate that back to you, that deep level of concern and care. And it doesn't mean that they're not capable of loving. It just means that they have their own journey to figure out what that means for them. And I'm saying that a radical love should be the foundation of education because if you don't care or are concerned about the children that you work with, and radically so to remove barriers for them, then you and I could become that barrier and mask ourselves as barriers by saying, I love and care and appreciate you. You matter to me. Black lives matter. You know what I mean? And so we have to be careful that we're not saying these things as just to be saying them or to be cool or to be hip or whatever they say. We're 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 doing actions We're showing in our behaviors how we hold ourselves accountable and others accountable, and how we have such a radical care and concern of others that we are searching for what barriers might get in the way of our students ahead of time so we can eliminate them before they even experience them. And this doesn't mean that some students are still not going to have struggles. We all are going to have struggles as human beings, and we want to promote a productive struggle when at all possible for students. However, it is to say that if there is an obstacle that is an institutional obstacle, that's not a productive struggle, then. At least to me, a productive struggle is a task that, when you look at the research, has a level of comfort and has a level of challenge. And it's like right in between. It's a little bit challenging, but there's a little bit you can do within it. That's productive struggle. It is simply task related and related to what you're doing. However, institutional challenges and biases and discrimination are barriers that we want to remove, such as unnecessary testing for children who just cannot handle that. If we can institutionally remove that so we can increase the amount of instruction that we have for kids, maybe, just maybe, they will learn more. And not only learn more, but feel more confident and love themselves and others in their community and outside of their community. Here in the United States, there's so much division among ourselves of whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you're Asian American, Native American, Latino. It's so much division. And whether it's a certain name or whether it's a certain institution or sticker, bumper sticker, banner, we're so divided because I don't think we have a good understanding in our educational experiences. What does it mean to radically love someone? It doesn't mean that you even agree with them all the time. I don't agree with the people that I radically love a lot of the time, to be quite honest. But since I love them, I'm going to share my truth and I'm going to hear out their truth and see where can we meet. Where is there a cross section between our 2 or 3 or 400 truths, and how can we use those truths together to empower each other? And so it's kind of a little bit about the background of where I'm coming from with this, because I have not yet seen or met. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's been in education for even longer than me. We have not seen nor have we met educational professional or even a family that, when some kind of love, whether it's radical or not, has not been shown, we have not seen great student accomplishments or achievement when the people who provide and care for the child do not actually love the child's existence. It doesn't mean that you have to love your students like they're your own children. That's not what that means. It means that you hold them in high regard because they are who they are, and that they are magnificent people who are going to make some mistakes, who are going to need some help, who are going to need some support. And that's what we're there for. And this doesn't mean that you have to say, you're my daughter, you're my son. It just means when you show up, I'm going to show up. And I'm going to show up for you by knowing what I need to know to support you and providing you with the resources and the strategies to be successful. And when you're wrong, I'm going to call you out when you're wrong, or call you in when you're wrong. And if you need help, I'm going to help you. If you need to be independent, I might say, hey, try that on your own first before I come over and help you, or work with a partner or a group. So that's what radical love means to me. And radical love as a foundation will lead to, once people know that you care about them, once people know that you're concerned about them, they want to show up, just like the students show up. I've worked with students for plenty of years, and I've told all my students, I said, I may not like everything that you do or everything that you say, but I love the fact that you exist. And I don't use the word value because sometimes in America, when we think of value, we automatically think of money. But when you use the word love, you automatically think about living beings. And so I wanted to center the word around that. So if you want to say that you have a radical valuation, and radical values and truly value your students, I'm down for that as well. I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just using the term radical love because for me, it's human centered first. And sometimes value can be, you can value a watch, you can value a TV, you can value a car, but it's not the same value as, of course, as a person or a living being. But when you say you love your cat, that means you really take care of that cat. You really care about it. Like, for example, I value some of the jewelry I have, but I don't wear it that often. But I love people in my family and my friends group and the students that I work with and their families. So there's a difference. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually going to try my best to show up for them. And actually, it was in March. I was doing a presentation in March, and I said to a room full of educators while I was leading a professional development around culturally responsive pedagogy or teaching. I said that I gave this activity, it was an affirmation activity where I said, say to your neighbors or your partners, I love and respect the person for who you are in this moment as you exist. And there were people who, I will say, the racial makeup of the room, even though we know race is a social construct, people who identify as white, some laughed, some felt uncomfortable with saying it. Some people who identified as black or Latino or another racial group and cultural groups didn't laugh; they just said it. And I think there was a cultural, thing that was underneath of that at the foundation because a radical love is deeply cultural too. Because what a radical love means to me is as a person who identifies as a Black American man or descendant of an African enslaved person in the United States, that means something different to someone else, and I have to understand and respect that. But I think we're missing in education some of that radical love. In fact, one person at this training that I led came over to me, and she is definitely a woman I respect for her deep content knowledge and professional knowledge and social studies. Um, she came over to me. I would assume that she identifies as white, but I could be wrong. But she came over to me and she said to me, well, I hope you don't say that to your kids. The statement was, I love, respect, and appreciate who you are in this moment. And for some reason, she felt obliged during like a transition to say, well, I hope you don't say that to your students. And I said, I have said that to my students because I want my students to understand that this is deeper for me than just teaching you how to multiply. While I'm teaching you how to multiply, I must also simultaneously eliminate any institutional harm that may come your way that might get in the way of you learning how to non divide or to continue your multiplication development. And so, and my students knew that. I've told my students for years that in my 10 years in the classroom, and students rose to the occasion and worked harder and harder. I had students who have disabilities, who have individualized educational programs or IEPs or 504 plans or English language learner plans, any kind of intervention plan. They've made 2, 3 years worth of progress in whatever subject I taught because they genuinely sense I cared about them, but I was also removing things that were getting in the way of them learning more. And that's what this is important. And this is what inspired the conversation for Curriculum Corner, because this is deeper than just, you know, teaching you how to write an objective or teaching you how to write a unit plan. I can always do that, but I want to give you something to think about. And once again, I don't think I'm right. I'm just saying that the teachers that I've had growing up as a kid, the reason that my life is vastly different than so many others that I grew up with is because I had teachers who had radical love for me, who sacrificed for me, who genuinely care about me, and who still do as an adult. And I keep in contact with them. And I'm extremely grateful for them. I would not be who I am, and I would not be where I am had it not been for their sacrifice and radical love in my life. So I'm extremely grateful for them. Um, Now, I was inspired to do this because it's been sitting with me for a while that someone told me, I hope you don't say to your students that you love and respect and appreciate their humanity and how they exist. Um, and this person continued to say, well, I love my husband and I love my kids, but I don't love the professionals that are in this room. And I just said to her, I said, you're entitled to how you feel about it. She said, I value them. And I said, that's perfectly fine. I mean, she probably meant the same thing that I meant. We just used different words, and that's fine. But I did wonder, why did the word love trigger people, but not the word value? Just think about that. Why did the word love trigger those who may present or identify as white? Why did that word trigger them, but not the word value? I just want you to think about that for a moment. My thought process on that is that in the United States, as we call ourselves a capitalist nation, everything has to have a value. Everyone must prove their value through their productivity. And for love, you don't have to prove your love through productivity necessarily. You prove it in your actions, of course, and your words and your level of care and concern, but you don't have to be extremely productive to do it. For example, I mean, let's use animals and pets to express this. Sometimes your dog or your cat might just sit in your lap and they love you. It's not a lot, it's not a huge gesture, but it's just enough. And that can get you through the day. Now, sometimes education is like that, saying that we love and respect and appreciate you for who you are, where you come from, and how you are, and this in this moment, because we only have the present. Um, Acknowledges that they first exist, they're living beings, and that we may not always agree. I may not like everything that you do. You might not like everything I do, but we will work together. We will find a way to achieve and do great things together. So, because of our idea of capitalism and the only way that sometimes some people are of meaning or importance to us is if they have some kind of value, whether they are productive or they have to work with us or they have to work for us, um, I think limits our humanity. Because in order to love, you have to be empathetic. I'm just talking about what I believe in. In my community, in the Black community, I grew up listening to the speeches and reading the speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Sister Soldier, um, Tupac, and A Tribe Called West, and so many others, Stevie Wonder and Patti LaBelle. And one of my favorite singers, Patti LaBelle, of course. If anyone knows that, I'm just letting you know. And one of my favorite songs by her is Somebody Loves You, and you know who it is. Now, the song is about an intimate relationship, but I love the idea that somebody loves you, you know who it is. She didn't say someone values you, you know who it is. Because I remember my teachers, like I valued all my teachers, even though some were just disrespectful, some were racist. Let's be clear, even at the college level. During the time there was a Black president, there was still stuff going on. Okay, um, but the I the people that I valued, I don't remember all the good things they've done for me. I just remember I valued the experience that was given because it wasn't given to others, and I was appreciative that I had the opportunity. Um, However, I do know the people who love me, the things that they've done to support me, to uplift me, to empower me, to nurture me. I remember them. I remember what they've done for me, what they did for me. I remember when I was in first grade and I had the flu and I was out for a few days. My first grade teacher, Miss Reinhardt, I don't know where she is, and I hope this gets out to her wherever she may be. Um, she came by with a pot of soup. A white woman in West Baltimore during the height of the crack cocaine epidemic and heroin epidemic in Baltimore in the early 90s and late 80s, came up to my apartment in a rough neighborhood that was right across the street from the school and brought a pot of soup for me to recover and said, we can't wait for Libra to come back. I will never forget that. And eating the soup and remembering that. And mind you, I was all of what, 6? Here I am, 33, and I remember that. I remember being in preschool, and I don't even remember my preschool teacher's name, but I remember her buying me dinosaurs, and because I was really into dinosaurs, and it's because I said that My dad wouldn't get it for me, and I don't think he loves me. And she says, I think he does, but I'm going to get this for you because I do. And I won't forget that's my earliest memory of like being around 3 or 4 going into preschool, um, and that being my experience. I remember so many people, Mr. Stovall, who was my social studies teacher in middle school and eighth grade, saying, I love you enough to know that you belong. You need to go to this high school in the city because they're going to have what you need to develop, and pushing me to put that list, that high school at the top of my high school selection list, and making sure I got there, and taking me to Artscape with some of my friends and my brother, and exposing me to the different arts that were within my own city so I would not always see the negativity in my city. So I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for my relationship with a good friend of mine and former Professor Paul, who consistently had my back and supported me and just always asked what he can do to make my experience at a predominantly white institution better. And even as an alumnus, how he can support me after he's retired as a professor. So I'm really grateful. And that's what I think that means. Somebody loves you, baby. You know who it is. Like, you know the people who love you, and you might not know people who value that much. Maybe your boss values you, but you don't really know them that well. Maybe your coworker values you, and you don't really know them that well. But isn't it funny that as educational professionals, the first thing they tell us is you got to know your students, you got to know your students, you got to know your students. But then you say, I don't need to love them in order to know them. Now, it's possible to know people and not love them. That's possible. But in order to know them to a level of which you can identify the things that they need, their strengths, and support them through their strengths and needs, and to eliminate institutional barriers that are in their way, they remember that. Kids remember that. When I see some of my former students who are now adults themselves and have kids of their own, and they see me, they remember assignments and topics we talked about when I taught them in elementary school. And here they now are adults, whether they're in college or working. They remember a debate that we had on blackface performers in vaudeville theater, at one point in American history. They remember that when they see me years later. And so I know that a radical love is important because it attaches you to people in a communal way. And Dr. King and Fred Hampton and Malcolm X, they talked a lot about this, about a radical love, especially Dr. King, to even love your enemy because your enemy is probably one who is deprived of the love itself. Hence why they're probably doing the evil things they're doing to you and the people in your community to begin with. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with what they're doing. It doesn't mean that you don't hold them accountable, but you love that they are a human being and they exist and that they are capable of changing. They might not be who we want them to be in that moment, but we must work together as a community of caring people and concerned people to ensure that they are doing things that are safe and prosperous for all, not just themselves. So I actually wanted to bring this up because I'm going to be reading excerpts over the next, few broadcasts about this Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. So that's who I'm referencing here. So when you hear me read a few quotes, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. And I wanted to read just a few quotes. And this is on page 45, like the very first chapter of the book. I'm going to read you one kind of big block quote, break it down, tell you what I think about it, and then read one more block quote, break it down, tell you what I think about it, and then we're going to close out so I can get some rest and you all can probably get some rest as well. So I'm on page 45 for those people who are getting this edition of the book. Mr. Ferrier writes, true generosity consists precisely in fighting to destroy the causes which nourish false charity. False charity constrains the fearful and subdued, the rejects of life, to extend their trembling hands. True generosity lies in striving so that these hands, whether of individuals or entire peoples, need be extended less and less in supplication, so that more and more they become human hands which work and are working to transform the world. I love that quote. So let me kind of break it down a little bit here as I understand it. On this page, Paulo Freire is talking about true generosity, truly being of a giving spirit. Going back again to what I said, radical love is about eliminating institutional barriers that are causing some of the problems for our students, while we are all simultaneously helping students improve and gain strong skill sets. And then he talks about this idea of false charity, which I see a lot in education. The people who mean well, people that they said they're going to serve, every organization and every leadership structure is different to a certain extent. My hypothesis is that with that false charity, there's a lack of a radical love for the, but I could be wrong. False charity constrains the fearful and subdued, the unquote rejects of life, off quote, to extend their trembling hands. So false charity is something that kind of binds or keeps people in chains, um, and essentially they feel and are treated like rejects, always holding out their hands for the things that they need, and their hands are trembling. There's no confidence there. There's a fear there. They're subdued. They're put in their place. And you'll see a lot of this false charity with people, in my opinion, once again, who lack radical love. That's enough on its own. And to me, in my opinion, it is not. I think we must both work at the individual and collective level to show our radical love for the people who need it, which are all people and all living beings on this planet. And through that radical love and care and elimination of those institutional harms, perhaps our societies can have more cohesion and unity and safety and peace and prosperity. Ferrier continues by saying, true generosity lies in striving so that these hands, whether of individuals or entire peoples, need to be extended and less in supplication, so they become more and more human, which work and are working to transform the world. So radical love is not just about this sense of false charity, like, oh, I love my kids, but I'm not going to eliminate any barriers in the way, and not going to address the curriculum is lying about who discovered what, when they discovered what, or who did this and who did that, and who didn't invent this and who did. Okay. A radical love is saying, look, there are different perspectives about this one topic. I want to address all of them. And I want you to be able to walk away with a critical lens to understand what is and what was for yourself, so that you can better be empowered as an individual and empower others within your community. Because radical love leads to transformation. It leads to students going from being far below grade level, which I had plenty of students that were 2, 3 years below grade level who were able to get on grade level in math and reading and writing within one school year working with me, because I worked to remove institutional barriers in their way, while I was also developing myself to provide the best possible services as a special education professional and teacher. And the goal should be that they become more human hands. False charity leads to subdued, fearful hands, but true generosity leads to human hands, where people feel like they exist. They are acknowledged in their existence. That's why I said I love and respect who you are, where you come from in this moment in time. Because our children need to hear that. Our adults and professionals need to hear that. Now I want to go to the next block quote and then kind of talk through that and then end after my analysis. And this fight, I'm still on page 45 for those people who are with me. And this fight, because of the purpose given it by the oppressed, will actually constitute an act of love opposing the lovelessness which lies at the heart of the oppressor's violence. Lovelessness, even when clothed in false generosity. So, love this quote. So, this fight, he says before, who better prepared than the oppressed to understand the terrible significance of an oppressive society? Those who are oppressed, those who are suffering, understand that suffering probably better than anyone else does because they're experiencing it currently or have experienced it. And they are the true arbiters of how to move forward towards liberation for all oppressed people, not only just the people that they identify with. But this fight that he talks about, the purpose given to it by the oppressed, so those who are suffering, has to, must constitute an act of love. I would say a radical love, like we're saying here. And I think what Paulo Freire is also referencing as well, opposing the lovelessness which lies at the heart of the oppressor's violence. This means when Dr. King says, love thy enemy, he's not saying allow them to do whatever they want to you. He's saying be deeply concerned about the fact that they have evil, lovelessness inside of them and how that spreads and harms everything, including them, in the way. And at the root of the oppressor's violence is a lovelessness, a lack of love, a lack of care and concern. But those who care and are concerned and want to remove institutional harms and biases and barriers, while also equipping those who are in the suffering with skills and knowledge to move forward, those are the people who are remembered by those who needed that love when they needed it. And they will be able to, when they come together with others who they radically love and who have been radically been the recipients of radical love, that true generosity that Paulo Freire discusses, they will be the people who will be able to effectively fight back and win against the oppression that they experience and oppression that other people experience. Because oppression, and I don't like to do oppression Olympics, oppression is oppression. It looks different depending on the group of people who are being oppressed. Some groups of people have a specific type, a nuanced type of being oppressed that can be more severe at times and some less severe. But at the end of the day, whether you're more oppressed or less oppressed, you're still suffering. Whether you're suffering a lot or a little, you're still suffering. And it is incumbent upon ourselves to have a radical love to alleviate and eliminate some, if not all, of the suffering that exists in communities necessarily. Life is going to bring us suffering, whether it's losing a loved one or, losing the lottery or, not having your way on something. That suffering is supposed to occur to remind us that life's not going to, do everything we want it to do all the time. But an unnecessary suffering just because of what you look like, where you were born, what you believe, those kind of things, who you are, how you identify. You shouldn't suffer because you just look different. You shouldn't suffer just because you speak a different or religious belief system. I mean, I thought this was America where those freedoms were supposed to be protected and secured. And that's why radical love is important. That even the framers of the Constitution, who many of them were, wealthy European, white or European, and indigenous Americans as, in their minds, their property. Even they knew radically that it's important to respect and preserve the rights of speech and and religion and so many other things, press, and you know, those rights that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights, because even they knew that a radical love, even in their misunderstanding and hypocrisy as people who owned enslaved individuals, even they knew the importance of respecting the ideas of someone else and trying their best to find the humanity in each other. And as time went on, finding the humanity within groups of people who were and continuously are oppressed today. So, why am I saying this? Like I said before, I was at a training and I said, I love and respect and appreciate who you are, where you come from, and how you exist in this moment. And there was a woman who appeared to me to be white. I could be wrong, or European descent, and told me I wouldn't say that to your students. I hope you don't say that to students. And I'm saying this because even a well-intentioned, phenomenal content professional leader like herself, who's been doing the work in education longer than I've been alive, even a person like that who has all the great intentions will still reject the idea of our children. When you just value things, you make some reforms. But when you radically love someone, you focus on liberation. And sometimes that means there's a revolution that occurs, that there's something being dismantled and something new being built. And we all have our differences of how we want to get there. But I do want to say, when it comes to children who come from historically marginalized backgrounds or diverse backgrounds, they seek our, sorry, there was a fly in here. They seek our love, they seek our care and our attention, in addition to wanting us to be the most competent people that we can possibly be for them. And I think that we should really think about what roles does a radical love ideology play in the foundation of education? Can a classroom or school district or charter work or, you know, colloquium or whatever you want to say, if can those systems, when they are built without a radical love in mind, are those systems going to benefit the most vulnerable of our communities? Are they? And what can we do to rebuild and reconstitute new systems, or systems that, borrowed the good ideas from the last system and got rid of the old ideas and added some new good ideas? What can we do to ensure that at the foundation, that students know that we genuinely care and are concerned about them, and that we are working not only to equip them with their skills and knowledge, but we're also working to remove barriers that are unnecessary barriers for them? And I think when we have this kind of ideology, it forces us to effectively work together to ensure that no student deals with unnecessary suffering. And even when they do suffer, that we are equipped as professionals and as a team of professionals and adults who care about our students with an understanding that we must approach any problem, any need, any concern with a level of care and a level of looking at a bigger picture of how collective systems as well as individual responses play a role in our children's development. And so that's why I came to you all tonight for Curriculum Corner Live, because this has been something that's been on my heart for the past 2 months. And I see things in the news and read